They said the railroad would bring civilization. But out here, in the dust between nowhere and hell, all it brought was the devil's promise. And the sound of men dying for someone else's fortune. The year was 1883. The sun hadn't yet broken the horizon, and already the desert shimmered like molten glass. 100 miles east of Yuma, the new railroad cut through the wilderness, a line of steel teeth biting into God's country. Men worked like ants on fire. Picks rose and fell. Engines groaned. And over them all stood William Cutter, railroad baron, ex-Union colonel, and the kind of man whose handshake felt like signing your own obituary. He wasn't building a railroad. He was building an empire, but that's not where this story begins. It begins with the man who came back. The one they said was dead. The one they called Elias Crow. A black-clad outlaw with eyes like winter storm clouds. They said he used to work for Cutter, a sharpshooter, a foreman, a loyal man. Until the day the company payroll vanished, and Cutter's men left Elias hanging from a telegraph pole. No one ever found the money. No one ever found the body. Until now that a lone rider appears across the shimmering horizon, black horse, duster coat, rifle strapped to his back. His shadow drags longer than the rail itself. The sound of iron wheels echoes faintly, not from a train, but from something heavier, memory. The man rides until the half-built track ends. He dismounts, kneels, and presses his palm to the rail. It's warm. Alive. He whispers. Still bleeding, ain't you? Down the line, a camp of laborers sleeps among tents and whiskey barrels. Chained men, immigrants, drifters, debtors, working for Cutter's dream. They don't know that dream's already turning into a nightmare. Inside the biggest tent, Cutter stands over a map spread across a whiskey-stained table. His lieutenant, Frank Duval, speaks softly. They say someone's been seen on the ridge, boss. Black horse. Looks like Crow. Cutter laughs without smiling. Crow's buzzard food. I made sure of it. But behind the laughter, a flicker of something colder, fear. Men build rails thinkin', they're buildin' the future, Cutter once said. But the truth is, we're just buryin' bones under steel, so no one remembers what it cost. Those words will come back to haunt him. Because the man he buried under those bones, has come to dig them up. At dusk, Elias Crow rides into Prospect Hollow, a boomtown born of greed. Every saloon sings the same tune, money, whiskey, and dust. He ties his horse outside the Silver Nail, pushes through the swinging doors, and silence falls. The piano player freezes mid-note. Every man's hand drifts toward his gun. Crow tips his hat, eyes scanning the room like a wolf smelling smoke. The barkeep swallows hard. You lookin' for work, stranger? Already found it, Crow says. I'm just here to collect payment. The barkeep's eyes widen. He's seen that face before, on a wanted poster. Crow remembers the night Cutter betrayed him. Rain hammering the desert. A campfire deal gone wrong. The payroll missing. A gunshot. The rope tightening around his throat. The last thing he saw, Cutter's boots walking away. And then, darkness. Until now, back at the camp, Cutter receives a package. Inside, a single ledger page, burned around the edges. On it, a line written in dried blood. You built your empire on my grave. Now it's my turn to lay the tracks. Cutter's hand trembles slightly. For the first time in 10 years, William Cutter feels mortal. A telegraph wire hums in the wind, carrying rumors across the frontier. A wanted poster flaps on a post, Elias Crow, dead or alive, $1,000. A lone vulture circles over the half-built railroad. Men whisper by the fire. They say he came back from the noose. They say he's huntin' Cutter's soul. They say he rides with ghosts. Frank Duval spits into the dirt. If Crow's back, he's a dead man walkin'. I'll see to that myself. Cutter doesn't answer. He's staring at the rails, watching the heat waves shimmer. To him, they look like snakes, twisting, waiting, alive. No, Cutter finally says. He's already dead. That's what makes him dangerous. Night falls. Crow stands on the unfinished tracks, staring into the darkness where the rail vanishes into nothing. Thunder rumbles faintly, though the sky is clear. In the distance, a faint whistle. No train, no smoke, just sound. The echo of the train that shouldn't exist. Crow doesn't flinch. He tips his hat, whispering to the dark. Keep your engine warm, Cutter. I'm comin' for your soul. The screen fades to black. Only the sound of metal grinding, like the devil himself sharpening his teeth. The morning came red. The kind of red that made men check their guns before their prayers. By sunrise, Cutter's railroad crew was already back at work, hammering steel into God's dust like they were trying to nail heaven shut. Each strike of the sledge echoed like a heartbeat, the sound of progress, or maybe punishment. And through it all, the wind carried whispers. A ghost on horseback. A man who'd come back from the gallows. A shadow following the line of iron. William Cutter stood atop the half-built trestle, cigar glowing in the morning haze. His coat flapped like a flag over conquest. Below him, the world was sweat and noise. Chains rattled. Hammers rose and fell. The air reeked of hot tar, blood, and ambition. Frank Duval approached, dust on his boots, eyes like cold gunmetal. We got 3 men dead last night, he said. Throats cut clean. One had his tongue nailed to a post. Cutter didn't flinch. Indians? No. Too clean for that. Too quiet. Then it's Crow. Frank nodded once. You really think he survived that night? Cutter exhaled a slow stream of smoke. The desert's full of ghosts, Frank. Some of them just take longer to die. In Prospect Hollow, the Silver Nail Saloon buzzed with talk of the killings. Some said it was justice. Others called it revenge. But most just drank faster and prayed slower. At the corner table, Elias Crow listened in silence. His hat shadowed his face, but his eyes burned cold under the brim. He rolled a silver coin across his knuckles, the same coin Cutter used to flip before every execution. A young telegraph boy entered, pale and sweating. He handed Crow a folded paper. Crow opened it. One line. We still own your soul. Cutter and Company. Crow smiled, slow and cruel. Then I reckon it's time to repossess it. A few miles west, the railroad crew had built something strange. A church made of scrap iron and rail beams, Cutter's idea of a company chapel. They called it the Iron Church. Every Sunday, the workers gathered there while Cutter preached about progress, profit, and providence, all in the same sentence. But that Sunday, something was different. When the preacher opened the heavy metal door, a single bullet casing rolled out across the floor. And etched into the shell was one word. Judgment. Cutter didn't show his fear, but it slithered in behind his ribs and stayed there. Crow rode at night, sleeping by day, following the rail like a hunter tracks blood. He didn't need a map, he remembered every mile he'd built before they hung him. Every bridge. Every grave. In his saddlebag, a ledger bound in torn leather. Inside, a list of names. Each one crossed out except 2. Frank Duval. William Cutter. Back at the main camp, Frank Duval poured whiskey like it was medicine. His hands shook just enough to rattle the glass. He'd been Cutter's right hand for 10 years, loyal, brutal, unthinking. But now, he couldn't sleep. Every night, he heard something, footsteps in the sand, far off, slow, steady. Once, he thought he saw a rider's shape on the ridge. When he raised his rifle, nothing. Just wind. He muttered to himself. You hang a man and he dies. You hang the wrong man, and he don't. That night, Cutter met with the railroad investors, men from Boston and New York, fat with money and faith in steel. They wanted progress. Cutter promised it. "Gentlemen," he said, voice slick as oil, "we ain't buildin' a railroad. We're buildin' America. One spike at a time." They clapped. They drank. They didn't see the figure outside the tent, black coat blending with the night, one eye reflecting the firelight like a wolf. Crow listened, memorizing every lie. Then he whispered to the desert wind. "If he's buildin' America, then I'm buildin' his tomb." Rain pounding. Thunder rolling over the desert. Cutter's men around the fire, laughter sharp and cruel. Crow holding the payroll chest, loyal to the end. Until Duval's voice. "He took it, boss. He's runnin'." Gunfire. Panic. A rope. The burning taste of betrayal. Crow's memory flickered. Cutter leaning close as the noose tightened. "Progress don't stop for no man, Elias. Not even you." Then blackness. And somewhere, faintly, a train whistle. Now, strange things began happening on the line. Rails warped overnight. Engines stalled under clear skies. Men swore they saw a rider in the steam, face hidden, eyes burning. Cutter dismissed it all. Superstition. Weak minds. But in the dark, even he began to hear it, that faint whistle in the distance, long before dawn. The sound of something coming. Something that didn't need tracks. 3 nights later, Frank Duval found Crow. Or maybe Crow found him. He was heading back from the saloon when he saw a shadow near the water tower. He drew his gun, but the barrel met a cold revolver already pressed to his chest. Crow's voice was calm. 10 years, Frank. I ain't forgotten." Duval swallowed. "Crow, it wasn't personal. Cutter made the call. I just followed orders. Then I'll follow mine." One shot. No echo. The desert swallowed the sound whole. Crow walked away, Duval's badge glinting in his hand. That night, Cutter was awakened by the sound of a train whistle, loud, close, wrong. He stumbled outside. No lights, no smoke. Just the faint vibration under his boots. He knelt, touched the rail. It was hot, pulsing. As if something was racing toward him in the dark. Then, faintly, from the distance. A figure on horseback, black against the moon, pacing the invisible train. Cutter whispered. "God help us." And from the ridge, the wind answered. "He won't." By dawn, the horizon looked like it was bleeding. Smoke rolled over the mesa, curling through the canyons like the ghost of an old god. The railroad was on fire. Cutter stood on the ridge, coat snapping in the hot wind, his jaw locked in stone fury. Behind him, the company men muttered and crossed themselves. One of them whispered. "That ain't fire, that's judgment." And maybe it was. Because the blaze ran perfectly along the track, mile after mile of glowing steel, like the devil himself had taken the rail for a road. The camp was chaos. Burned ties. Twisted metal. Men dead where they'd slept, rifles melted in their hands. The telegraph wires hissed like snakes overhead. Cutter's second foreman ran up, coughing through the smoke. "It's deliberate, sir. Every can of oil tipped. Every wagon set ablaze." Cutter's cigar trembled. "You telling me one man did all this?" The foreman hesitated. "Maybe one, or maybe one with ghosts." Cutter drew his pistol and shot the man dead. "Ghosts don't burn steel," he growled. But deep down, even he didn't believe it. Miles away, Elias Crow rode through the desert blaze like he was born from it. His horse's mane flickered in the reflection of the burning line. His eyes were ash-colored, steady. Each breath tasted like old smoke and vengeance. He'd crossed another name from the ledger. Now, only one remained. William Cutter. But vengeance isn't clean. It seeps, it stains, it starts whispering to a man. When it's done, what's left of you? Crow didn't answer. He just rode. Years ago, before the betrayal, Crow had been a believer. He'd stood in a church made of wood, not iron, with his hand over the Bible. He'd sworn to bring law and light to the frontier. Then Cutter came, gold in his smile, sin in his pocket. "Help me build a line to the Pacific," he said. "And you'll own a piece of the future." But the future came with a price. Crow watched as Cutter paid men in whiskey, stole land from widows, buried dissent under rail ties. When Crow confronted him, Cutter didn't argue. He simply smiled. "The world don't run on justice, Elias. It runs on iron, and I hold the hammer." That night, Cutter forged more than rails. He forged his own legend, and Crow's new study. Dusk, Crow stopped at a broken-down station. A single lantern burned inside, swinging slow. An old widow named Martha sat behind the counter, eyes hollow, skin pale as dust. "You ridin' toward Cutter's camp?" she asked. "That's right." "Then you'll meet him halfway. He's sendin' men. 20 of 'em." Crow tipped his hat. "Ain't the first time 20 tried to kill me." Martha's hand trembled. She slid something across the counter, a silver cross, blackened at the edges. "He took my land. My husband. My faith. Take it back to him, so he remembers what he sold." Crow took the cross, nodded once, and rode out into the dark. Behind him, the widow whispered. "He ain't afraid of death no more. He thinks he bought it." They came for him at midnight, 20 riders, guns gleaming, moonlight slicing through the canyon. But Crow was waiting. He'd laid dynamite beneath the rail, wires running up to where he knelt on a ridge. When the first riders crossed. Boom! A shockwave tore the night apart. Flames erupted, iron shrieked, horses screamed. Crow moved like smoke, cold, deliberate, silent. One gun. One bullet per name. Every shot a prayer. Every death an echo. When the dust cleared, he walked through the ruins, his shadow dragging long behind him. He took the cross from his pocket and tossed it into the fire. "Hell's full," he muttered. "Guess I'll bring it topside." Back at the main camp, Cutter couldn't sleep. He sat alone in his tent, staring at the ledger Crow once kept, the names of every man who'd worked the line, living and dead. He saw Duval's name crossed out in red. He saw the rest, foremen, guards, enforcers, all marked with a rough X. Only his own name remained clean. Until the candle beside him flickered. And a shadow on the tent wall traced a finger across his name. A whisper followed. "Not long now." Cutter spun around, pistol drawn. But the tent was empty. Only the desert wind replied, carrying the faint rattle of chains. That night, as Crow camped by the burned rail, he spoke to the stars. "They say vengeance frees a man," he murmured. "But it don't. It builds a cage, and every bullet's another bar." He looked down at his revolver, 6 chambers, 1 empty. 5 done. 1 left. "The last bullet's for me." The fire cracked, sending sparks into the wind like dying souls. And somewhere, faintly, a train whistle moaned across the wasteland. Slow, mournful, unending, near midnight, the ground began to tremble. Cutter stepped outside his tent, thinking it was an earthquake. But then he saw the rails glow red, molten, alive. And out of the darkness came a sound no man should ever hear. The whistle of a train that wasn't there. No lights. No smoke. No engine. Just the shape of it, fire and shadow, thundering down the line. And pacing it, side by side, a rider in black. Cutter dropped to his knees. "God forgive me." But the voice that answered wasn't God's. It was Crow's, deep, calm, final. He ain't talking passengers tonight. As the phantom train roared past, the desert lit crimson under a blood moon. Cutter's empire trembled. The rails bent under invisible weight, screaming like tortured souls. And when the fire faded, the entire camp lay in ruin, every spike pulled from the ground, every rail twisted like a serpent. Only one figure rode away. Elias Crow. Heading west. Toward the SEA.BY sunrise, the desert looked like a battlefield of ghosts. Smoke curled from the twisted rails, and vultures circled slow above the wreckage. The railroad, Cutter's empire of iron, was gone. But far out on the horizon, a single horse moved through the haze. Elias Crow. Alive. Unbroken. His shadow stretched long behind him, dragging across the ruined line like a scar that refused to fade. He'd burned the tracks, broken the chains, and buried every man who'd once called him brother. All that remained was the man who'd started it all. William Cutter. And the desert whispered. There are no kings out here. Only survivors. Cutter had retreated to his final refuge, a mansion built from the bones of the frontier. Iron pillars. Stained glass windows that caught no light. They called it the sanctuary, though no prayers had ever been answered there. He sat at a long oak table, revolver in one hand, whiskey in the other. Around him, maps and deeds lay scattered, the ruins of a dream. He hadn't slept in days. Not since the fire. Not since he saw that phantom train tear through his empire like a ghost dragging its chain. And yet, some part of him still smiled. The line'll rise again, he muttered. Progress always does. But his voice trembled. Because even progress has to pay its fare. Outside, the desert wind howled through the empty rails. Crow dismounted, boots sinking into black sand. He tied his horse to a dead post and walked toward the mansion, slow and deliberate. Every step echoed like a hammer against a coffin lid. In his pocket, the silver coin Cutter once flipped before every hanging. In his belt, one bullet left. The one with Cutter's name on it. He paused at the gate. On the arch above it, carved into iron. Man conquers all. Crow traced the letters with his glove. Then he whispered. Let's see. Cutter looked up when the doors burst open. Crow stepped into the light, dust in his coat, fire in his eyes. For a long moment, neither spoke. Only the wind outside answered, howling through the broken rafters like an unholy choir. Then Cutter broke the silence. You should be dead. Crow's voice was steady. I was. You just built your empire on the wrong grave. Cutter raised his pistol. You burned my railroad, killed my men. For what? Justice? Revenge? For truth, Crow said. So the world remembers what your kind costs. Cutter laughed, a dry, bitter sound. The world don't care about cost. Only results. Crow's gaze hardened. Then this is your result. 2 guns rose. 2 hammers cocked. Time stopped breathing, the first shot tore through the silence like thunder. Then another. Then another. Glass shattered. Flames leapt from the drapes. The room became a storm of dust and light. When it was over, Cutter lay against the far wall, clutching his side. Crow stood bleeding, one arm hanging limp. Smoke coiled between them, the ghost of every man they'd buried. Cutter coughed blood and grinned. You think killin' me changes anything? There'll be another me tomorrow, richer, colder, smarter. Crow staggered closer, boots echoing on the marble floor. He pressed the barrel of his gun to Cutter's forehead. Then let tomorrow remember this. But he didn't pull the trigger. He holstered the gun. Turned away. Cutter blinked in disbelief. You won't finish it? Crow paused at the door. No. Men like you don't need killin', William. You need rememberin'. He tossed the silver coin, it spun once, glinting in the firelight, and landed beside Cutter's hand. Then Crow walked out, leaving the mansion burning behind him. By nightfall, the flames had eaten the last of Cutter's empire. The fire ran down the rails like a snake swallowing its tail, until it reached the desert's edge and died out. Nothing remained but twisted metal, ash, and silence. And somewhere in that silence, the faint sound of a train whistle, fading into forever. Crow rode west, following the horizon until the sand gave way to the sea. He dismounted, stood barefoot in the surf. The sky burned orange, the same color as the fires he'd lit. He took out the revolver. 5 spent shells. 1 empty chamber. He threw it into the water. Vengeance is just another rail, he whispered. You think it ends, but it only turns back on itself. He reached into his coat and pulled out the widow's blackened cross. Held it against the setting sun. Maybe God don't ride these tracks, he said. But I reckon he still watches where they lead. Then he let the cross fall into the waves. Years later, travelers spoke of a sound in the desert. A whistle with no train, echoing through the canyons at dusk. Some said it was Cutter's ghost, still trying to build his railroad to heaven. Others swore it was Crow, riding alongside that phantom engine, making sure it never reached its end. But the old-timers in Prospect Hollow, the ones who remembered the fire and the blood, they'd just shake their heads and say, "The devil don't ride trains no more. He built one. And it's still runnin'."